All right, let's dive into a short but incredibly powerful prophecy from the book of Isaiah, chapter 7. We're going to be looking closely at verses 17 through 25. This was a message for King Ahaz of Judah, and trust me, it's a stark warning, packed with some really vivid and pretty severe imagery. So let's get right into it. So think about this question for a second. It's really the tragic, ironic heart of the passage we're about to explore. You have King Ahaz, who's desperately looking for a powerful ally to save him, but the very alliance he makes is going to become the instrument of his kingdom's complete ruin. Keep that in your mind as we go. What happens when your savior becomes your destroyer? Okay, so this is where the prophecy takes a really sharp, ominous turn. See, earlier in the chapter, Isaiah had offered King Ahaz a promise of deliverance. But now, the tone just completely flips. We're shifting from hope to a warning of a disaster so bad, it's unlike anything Judah has ever seen before. Let's look at verse 17. The key phrase here is days that have not come, from the day that Ephraim departed from Judah. What does that mean? It means the judgment that's coming is going to be worse than the devastating civil war that literally ripped the kingdom of Israel in two. And notice who's behind it. The text is crystal clear. The Lord shall bring this disaster. And here's the kicker. The agent of this unprecedented destruction is named right there in the text, the king of Assyria. This is the very nation King Ahaz was trying to pay off for protection. His chosen savior is being prophesied to become his ultimate destroyer. The irony is just staggering. Now, to describe this invasion, the prophecy shifts into this powerful, symbolic language. The invading armies aren't just, guys with swords. They're depicted as these overwhelming, unstoppable swarms summoned by God himself. So in verse 18, we read that the Lord will hiss for two creatures, a fly from Egypt and a bee from Assyria. Now, these are not random insects. They are powerful metaphors for two massive invading empires. So what does it mean to hiss? It's not a sound of contempt like we might think. It's a divine summons. It's a powerful call to action, kind of like how a beekeeper would whistle or call to a swarm. We actually see this same language used in Isaiah chapter 2, describing how the Lord can muster armies from far-off lands to carry out his plans. So here's the breakdown. The fly, that's Egypt, coming up from the south, from the region of the Nile River. And the bee, known for its powerful sting and its relentless swarming, that represents Assyria, the fierce empire up to the north. God is basically calling two superpowers to converge on Judah. Verse 19 tells us what happens when God makes this call. These insects, these armies, will come and they will settle everywhere. They'll fill the desolate valleys, the cracks in the rocks, every thorny bush. The imagery is all about a total, inescapable occupation. There is literally going to be nowhere left to hide. Okay, now we get to one of the most striking and, frankly, severe metaphors in the entire passage. The prophecy moves from swarming insects to a sharp, cutting razor, which is meant to symbolize a complete and utter stripping of the nation's dignity and honor. Verse 20 lays it all out. The Lord will use a razor that is hired to shave everything, the head, the hair of the feet, and even the beard. And again, the instrument is identified, the king of Assyria. This is not a simple haircut. In that culture, this is an act of profound shame and humiliation. Now that word hired is absolutely crucial. Why a hired razor? Well, this points directly to the tribute money, the cash that King Ahaz paid to Assyria to get their help. The very payment that was meant to buy protection is now funding the instrument of Judah's humiliation. It is the direct consequence of Ahaz's faithless decision. The act of shaving itself symbolizes total devastation across every single level of society. Shaving the head, that takes away the glory of the leaders, the nobles. Shaving the hair of the feet signifies the debasement of the common people, the lowest class. And consuming the beard, which was a massive symbol of honor and manhood back then, that represents the ultimate humiliation for the king and the high priest. Nobody is spared. And this theme of an overwhelming, unstoppable force gets reinforced in the very next chapter of Isaiah. Here, the Assyrian invasion is compared to a catastrophic flood, the waters of the river Euphrates overflowing its banks and just sweeping through Judah. It's another incredibly powerful image of an unstoppable force. So what's left after these swarms and this razor have done their work? Well, the final verses of our passage, 21 through 25, they paint a really bleak picture of the aftermath. It's a land that's basically been returned to a primitive, wild state. Now, at first glance, verses 21 and 22 might sound kind of pleasant, eating butter and honey, right? But you've got to understand, this is not a sign of prosperity. This is the diet of a collapsed society. It's what people eat when organized agriculture just doesn't exist anymore. This actually connects directly back to the prophecy about the child Emmanuel, back in verse 15. The land is going to be so depopulated that the few animals left will have these huge, vast pastures producing tons of milk or butter. But the cultivated crops that are the signs of civilization, the corn, the wine, the oil, they're all gone. People are left to survive on animal products and whatever they can forage, like wild honey. And to really get how far the land has fallen, check out this detail. Before the invasion, a prime vineyard with 1,000 vines could bring in an annual rent of 1,000 silverlings. That's a shekel per vine, a sign of incredible value and productivity. But in sharp contrast, verse 23 shows us the result. Those same priceless vineyards, the pride of Judah's agriculture, are going to become wastelands. Just briars and thorns. The land is literally going back to wilderness. So the final state of the land, described in verses 24 and 25, is a complete reversal of civilization. People will go into these once farmed areas not to plant, but to hunt with bows and arrows. The hills that were once so carefully tilled by hand will be so overgrown, they're only good for letting wild oxen and cattle graze. This prophecy is without a doubt incredibly harsh. It's a stark warning about the consequences of putting your faith in worldly alliances instead of in God. It describes a nation stripped completely bare, from its leaders all the way down to its land, and it leaves us with a really heavy question. When everything is lost, what is left? It forces you to look for the remnant, which is a big theme in Isaiah, and just wonder, what could possibly survive such a complete and total devastation?